Welcome. We are diving deep today, and this one is, well, it's essential. We're looking at a fundamental architectural mandate for anyone building software, especially Microsoft, that relies on external intelligence.
hmm
So if your product is a wrapper around a generative AI model, if it takes a simple user request and turns it into an expensive API call, this is basically your financial self-defense playbook.
The stakes here are about as high as they get. We're
Yeah.
really talking about the critical vulnerability,
Yeah.
the thing that draws a razor-thin line between a truly scalable, high-margin business and, well, a perfectly executed hobby project.
A hobby project that goes bankrupt the moment it gets popular.
Exactly, the moment it succeeds. It's that point where rapid user growth stops being a milestone to celebrate and starts becoming an existential threat.
That is. Yeah, that's terrifying. Okay, so let's unpack this. We're drawing on some really crucial unreleased material today. These are excerpts from the forthcoming book, Boring Problems, Big Money.
And this book is really proving to be the definitive blueprint for building these kind of automated defensible income streams, especially for people leveraging serverless tech like Google Apps Script to build, say, custom spreadsheet add-ons.
And we absolutely have to give credit where it's due.
We must. A special thank you to the owner of this knowledge, the ex-freelancer himself, for giving us this unprecedented access to the blueprint, to the financial architecture.
Right, before it's even released. It's a rare look into the actual physics of building financially defensible software in this new AI economy.
It really is.
So, our mission today is laser focused. We need to inoculate you against what the source material just bluntly calls the mathematical suicide pact.
Hmm.
And you need to stop doing this immediately. Stop assuming that the forgiving traditional sauce economics you read about in, the business blogs, stop assuming that applies to your AI wrapper.
That assumption is the killer. It's what takes out most first-time builders.
Because the trap is subtle.
It's incredibly subtle, yeah. It's often buried deep in the financial ledger, but it is ultimately fatal. The core financial vulnerability of all modern software that uses external intelligence. It lies in the volatility of the variable cost of goods sold, your COGS.
Okay, lay out that contrast for us. What was the old way of thinking about COGS, and why is this new model so dangerous?
So in the old world, let's say 5 years ago, if you built a SaaS tool, your COGS after the initial build was basically zero.
Right.
Your marginal cost was negligible. You paid for your server, maybe a small database fee, and that was about it. Growth was almost pure profit.
More users, more money. Simple.
Simple. Now, that entire cost structure is schist. It's shattered
Yeah.
because you rely on external APIs, Gemini, OpenAI, Stripe, even third-party data services. Every user action, every single click that fires off an AI task now incurs a linear, predictable, and sometimes very volatile financial liability.
And that brings us to the catastrophe, the root of this whole suicide pact.
Yes.
If you decide to sell your product with a flat monthly rate, $49 a month for unlimited use, and that product is hitting paid tokens hard, your success is what directly creates your failure.
Your growth in users, your growth in usage, it only serves to accelerate your financial ruin. You are, and this is not an exaggeration, you're funding the core intelligence engine out of your own profit margin.
The architect who commits to that model, they're just selling subsidized computational labor.
That's the perfect way to put it. It's the ultimate existential crisis for the AI-powered spreadsheet architect. You find yourself in a position where you either have to constantly chase new funding or just watch your margins completely collapse.
So if a healthy business is where success generates profit, this failed model is one where success generates liability.
Precisely. And our goal here is not just to write code for profit. That's the freelancer mindset. The architect's mandate, as the book defines it, is to architect the margin itself. You have to ensure that your revenue scales perfectly with the user's consumption, or, preferably faster than it. You have to establish absolute monetization alignment.
Okay, let's really dig into that. Let's start with the definition of the threat, this mathematical suicide pact.
Let's do it.
It seems like understanding the old way of thinking is the key to seeing just how toxic the new reality is.
It is. Back in the day, if you built, say, an app script add-on that just streamlined data manipulation, replacing a complex array formula or a VLOOKUP chain, your marginal cost for the 10,000th user was zero.
Right. It didn't cost you any more to serve them than the first user, really.
Not a cent. You had a predictable, near-perfect profit margin on every single dollar of revenue.
And that was the golden age of microSaaS.
It was, and it set a disastrous expectation for the AI era. The moment you introduce an API dependency, whether it's for external data or critically for generative AI, you introduce a linear financial liability.
An unavoidable cost.
Unavoidable. If it costs your business, say, half a cent to prompt the LLM and process one row of data, and a heavy user processes 10,000 rows in an afternoon,
Yeah.
well, you now have an undeniable linear $50 cost.
A $50 cost that exists no matter what they paid you.
It exists regardless of the $49 flat fee they paid you for the entire month.
And this is where developers, especially ones focused on just shipping something fast, they instinctively fall for the flat rate temptation.
Oh, absolutely. It's simple. It's attractive to customers. It removes all the decision friction. $49 a month for unlimited use. It feels easy to market, simple to build.
It's the path of least resistance at launch.
Which is exactly why it's the most common and the most dangerous structural flaw. When you give in to that temptation, the business ends up doing exactly what you said, selling subsidized computational labor.
You're covering the Gemini API call.
The Stripe payment processing fee, the serverless execution time, all of it comes out of that single fixed $49.
And if the user is aggressive with the tool.
And remember, your best users are always the aggressive ones. That $49 just evaporates into your COGS. Often, it leaves you with a deficit for that user.
Okay, let's get to the real aha moment of this deep dive. The core of the issue, the precise flaw the book identifies. Let's define the mathematical suicide pact in terms of, like, human economic behavior.
The source material is crystal clear on this. Flat pricing fails for these AI wrappers, not just because the API is expensive, I mean, it is, but because of a phenomenon called adverse selection.
Adverse selection.
Yeah, it's a powerful predictive concept taken directly from insurance economics, but it applies perfectly to compute consumption.
So explain adverse selection in this context. How does it work here?
Okay, so in insurance, adverse selection means that the people who are most likely to buy the insurance are the ones with the highest risk. You know, the ones most likely to actually file a claim.
Okay, makes sense.
Applied to SaaS, it means the users most likely to purchase your unlimited or flat rate plan are precisely the heavy users. They're the ones who've done the math and recognize the massive financial arbitrage opportunity you're offering them.
So the power user, the spreadsheet architect running complex daily processes, the marketing agency with huge data needs, they're sophisticated. They recognize the raw, unsubsidized cost of the intelligence they're getting.
Exactly. They look at your $49 a month flat fee, and they compare it to the cost of buying the equivalent raw tokens directly from the API provider.
And they realize.
They realize that the raw cost of the intelligence they plan to consume, the sheer volume of tokens, is far, far higher than the meager $49 they're paying you.
Yeah.
They see your subscription not as payment for software, but as a heavily discounted gift certificate for their annual compute budget.
I see it now. The financial arbitrage from the user's side. If they know that the 50,000 documents they need to process this month would cost them, say, $350 in raw API tokens, paying you $49 is an incredible deal.
It's a no-brainer.
They're essentially locking in a $301 profit just by using your service.
That is the perfect explanation of the arbitrage. The power user effectively uses their cheap subscription fee to finance their expensive computational needs. And that causes the architect's margin to collapse almost instantly.
And when this adverse selection happens at scale,
the margin doesn't just shrink, it often goes negative. The business, even though it's ticking all the growth boxes, more users, more engagement, finds that every new high-usage customer is a direct, calculated financial liability multiplier.
that is truly the definition of the mathematical suicide pact. It's a literal business model where your highest value, most active users are the very people pushing you towards insolvency.
Yes.
Growth isn't a good thing. It's an acceleration toward bankruptcy.
The core mandate, then, has to be preventing this transfer of risk from the power user to you, the architect. If the user is saving $300 by using your tool, you need a revenue model that captures a substantial proportional piece of that value, not a fixed $49 fee.
You have to stop subsidizing the core intelligence engine.
You must.
Let's make this brutally concrete. The book provides a real-world example, the sentiment analysis disaster.
Yes, this is a classic early-stage AI wrapper failure. So imagine an architect built this excellent AI-powered sentiment analysis tool for Google Sheets.
Okay.
Its only job was to read these huge columns of unstructured customer reviews, say 100,000 rows, and tag each one as positive, negative, or neutral using a premium LLM.
And the architect priced it at a flat $29 a month. Simple, easy.
Simple and easy, believing the volume would probably be low and the platform cost would be the main thing.
But then a large, sophisticated user signs up, a digital marketing agency running dozens of client accounts.
Exactly. And they love the tool because it replaces the work of several junior analysts, so they immediately start feeding it everything they have.
This is where the grim math, as the book calls it, just hits with devastating speed.
Devastating speed. This agency isn't processing 100 reviews. They're processing 10,000 unique customer reviews daily,
Yes.
7 days a week, across multiple spreadsheets.
And each one of those is a small but expensive call to a high-quality premium LLM.
So that single $29 subscription is suddenly facing a tidal wave of compute requests. It's an instant margin obliteration.
So the architect eventually runs an audit, probably after getting a shocking API bill.
That's usually what prompts it. A shockingly high monthly API bill, and they discovered the magnitude of the loss. That single $29 subscription subsidized approximately $300 worth of premium API tokens, all consumed by that one heavy usage account.
Wait, I have to repeat that. The architect received $29, but paid out $300. That's a margin of negative 933%.
The numbers don't lie. For every power user like that one, the architect was paying $271 out of pocket every single month, just for the privilege of keeping them as a customer.
You're paying your most demanding customers to use your product.
You are.
That audit must have been a sickening moment of realization.
It was the defining moment that forced a pivot. The conclusion is inescapable. If you use this flat pricing structure for an AI wrapper, you're not running a scalable business. You're running a charity for heavy compute users. The business is inherently unsound.
Because the input is linear, but the output is fixed.
The economic input, the cost, is linear with consumption, but the economic output, the revenue, is fixed. It creates an unbridgeable gap.
Okay. We have established the threat very clearly.
Yeah.
Now, we have to pivot to the cure.
The defense.
If the variable cost intelligence is the greatest architectural liability, then the most robust cure, the absolute strongest defense, is to just shift that liability completely off your balance sheet.
Right.
And that brings us to the architect's first line of defense, the bring your own key model, BYOK.
BYOK is the gold standard defense against what the book calls the AI cost disease, because it legally, financially, and technically decouples that cost volatility from your balance sheet, the architect's balance sheet, and it transfers it directly to the user.
It's a huge mindset shift.
It is. It transforms you from a commodity fuel supplier, who's always worried about gas prices, into a builder of high-performance, high-margin engines. And you only charge for the engine itself.
For this to work, though, you have to be really clear in your marketing about two distinct elements of value that your add-on provides.
Oh, absolutely. The value proposition gets bifurcated. First, you have the platform fee. This is the architect's reliable, high-margin revenue stream.
And that covers what?
It covers the inherent value of your software, the intuitive UI, the robust workflow automation, the expert prompt engineering that's embedded in your code, the custom Google Apps Script connector that handles all the authentication and limits, and, of course, ongoing support. That's your fixed cost, high profit component.
And then there's the second component, the variable one.
That is the intelligence fee. This is the volatile cost of the raw LLM tokens used for generation or translation or analysis. This is, and it must be, the user's liability.
So with BYOK, the user buys their own API key from Gemini or OpenAI.
Right, or Anthropic, whoever.
Yeah.
They plug it securely into your add-on settings, and then your script just draws down on the user's account balance for every single token it consumes.
The genius here is the monetization alignment. The architect charges a predictable, high-margin recurring fee for the platform, the sophisticated engine, and the user is solely responsible for providing their own fuel.
Exactly. So if the user decides to run 10,000 queries a day, they still pay you that fixed $19 a month platform fee, but they pay the corresponding $300+ in volatile API fees directly to the AI provider.
And what's the result?
The architect's gross margin is protected perpetually. It doesn't matter how aggressively the power user consumes. The arbitrage opportunity just vanishes, and adverse selection becomes economically irrelevant to your business's solvency.
Okay, let's go deeper on what the source material calls risk reversal architecture. Beyond just decoupling the cost, what are the three key benefits of BYOK, especially when you're targeting those high-value enterprise clients?
Okay, the first, which we've really hammered home, is cost decoupling. Your gross margins are structurally immune to erosion by power users. If the cost of tokens doubles next year, your platform margin stays exactly the same.
Because the user absorbs that change.
The user absorbs it. And this is critical for your company's valuation down the road.
What about data and privacy? That's something that can cripple smaller developers.
That brings us to the second, and I'd say equally vital, benefit. The liability shift. When the user provides their own API key, they're initiating a direct contractual relationship with the AI provider about how their proprietary data gets processed. This is massive.
So you're not in the middle of it.
You're not. It mitigates your liability, the architect's liability regarding data retention, data sovereignty, security concerns. Your code just acts as a secured, authorized pass-through. You never actually hold or retain the customer's raw, sensitive input or output data.
That separation of concerns is huge. You're dramatically reducing your legal attack surface.
Precisely. And the third benefit is the path to conquering that lucrative enterprise market, enterprise trust.
Okay.
Large organizations, particularly in finance, healthcare, HR, they have really stringent internal compliance and regulatory requirements. And they overwhelmingly prefer BYOK.
Why is that?
Because their corporate API accounts often come with specific high-cost, zero data retention guarantees from the major AI providers.
So if an HR department is running sentiment analysis on, say, confidential employee exit interviews, they have to know that that raw text is not being used by the LLM provider for training.
And not being retained by the third-party developer.
Right.
Absolutely.
And
BYOK provides that guaranteed chain of custody. The architect isn't just selling a cheaper tool, they're selling a compliant, risk-managed architectural solution. The IT department can see the contract their company holds with Google or OpenAI and know exactly where their data stops.
it turns your product from a convenience into a mission-critical piece of infrastructure.
That's the goal.
That all makes perfect sense, but this is where I have to challenge the model. The solution, while it's financially perfect, it introduces massive friction.
It does.
For a non-technical user, setting up an API key, configuring billing with Gemini, plugging that key into your add-on, that can be incredibly confusing.
Yeah.
Isn't the setup friction of BYOK so high that it just kills the conversion rate for like 80% of your users?
That is the necessary and unavoidable trade-off. And the source material addresses this head-on. Look, if your product is $5 a month and the token cost is trivial, BYOK is a terrible decision. The friction will crush your conversions. But for high-cost AI operations, where the potential token cost significantly outweighs the subscription cost, friction is the necessary cost of staying solvent.
So you're filtering for a specific type of user here.
Exactly. You're filtering for the sophisticated user who understands the value of the intelligence they're getting and is probably already using APIs elsewhere. You're prioritizing margin stability and long-term security over frictionless onboarding.
So it's a strategic choice.
It's a strategic choice. For an app that costs the developer 5 cents per use, friction is bad. For an application where one power user could literally bankrupt the company in a month, friction is a mandatory economic defense mechanism. The architect has to choose conversion volume or margin security. You can't have high volume, low friction, and margin security at the same time with a flat fee AI wrapper. It's impossible.
Okay, so BYOK is the gold standard, the highest defense. But let's say an architect decides their target market is just fundamentally friction averse. They have to provide a seamless onboarding experience.
Right.
They choose to absorb the variable cost, but they still need to establish that monetization alignment. They need a different defense.
So they pivot to the credit pack model. The book defines this as the architect's second, more friction-friendly line of defense. And it's basically usage-based pricing, or UBP, delivered through what's charmingly called the arcade model.
The arcade model. I like that. You put your money in, you get some abstract units, tokens, credits, and you spend them till they run out.
Precisely. It creates a psychological link between consumption and cost. The user pays up front for these abstract units of consumption, which are designed to correspond loosely to API usage.
And this systems is brilliant in a couple of ways.
It is. First, there's the abstraction. We charge in credits or generations instead of millions of tokens.
Why is that abstraction so critical? Why not just bill based on exact token counts? I mean, that's more transparent to a developer.
Because non-technical users find raw token counts, billions of units, complex pricing tiers for input versus output. They find it confusing, stressful, and unpredictable.
Right.
They understand clear, consumable units. They get 500 AI generations for $20, far better than 15 million input tokens and 40 million output tokens at a blended rate of whatever.
So abstraction turns a technical cost into a predictable business value.
Yes, it dramatically reduces that per-token anxiety that kills conversions.
And beyond the user experience, this model has a massive financial advantage that every bootstrapped architect needs to leverage. Negative working capital.
This is the hidden financial superpower of the credit pack. The core principle is simple. The architect receives the cash, the $20 for the credits, before incurring the corresponding API expense.
And that immediately improves your cash flow.
Immediately and dramatically improves your cash flow solvency and your operational runway.
Okay, lay out the cash flow timeline for us. Why is this so vital for runway?
So in the flat rate model, you pay the API provider instantly, or within a few days, when the user makes a request. You then wait, say 30 days, for Stripe to release the funds from that user's $49 monthly payment. And you're hoping they don't cancel in the meantime.
So you're fronting the cost.
You're servicing your cost with your own capital for 30 days. That is positive working capital. Your money is tied up.
With the credit pack model.
The user buys $100 in credits today. You now have $100 in cash reserves. They might use those credits over the next 2 months. You use their $100 to pay for the API calls as they happen.
So you're being funded by your customers.
You are, technically. That is negative working capital, and it's an incredibly powerful driver for a bootstrapped business. It extends your runway without needing external equity or debt. It means you are always solvent, as long as you maintain an appropriate buffer.
Okay, so that solves the cash flow problem. But now we've introduced a new, purely technical architectural risk, especially in a serverless environment like Google Apps Script. If the system fails to deduct credits correctly, the architect suffers from financial leakage.
Yes, and this is where we move from economics to essential computer science. We're talking about the danger of the race condition or the dreaded thundering herd event. It's uniquely dangerous in a shared execution environment like Apps Script.
Tell us in detail how the thundering herd happens and what makes it so catastrophic.
Okay, so the thundering herd happens when a sophisticated user, or sometimes just a simple automation error, initiates multiple rapid requests simultaneously.
Like someone just mashing the run button.
Exactly. Or maybe 2 different sheet automation triggers fire within milliseconds of each other. Multiple script instances try to execute the credit deduction logic concurrently. They're literally racing each other.
And if they all access the credit balance at the same time, what happens?
If that deduction logic isn't rigorously protected, a catastrophic revenue leak occurs. Let's run the scenario. A user has 10 credits left, and they're analyzing a huge data set that costs 1 credit per batch.
Okay, and 3 script instances launch from those rapid clicks.
Script A reads the current credit balance, 10. A millisecond later, script B reads the balance, 10. Script C reads the balance, 10.
They all think the user has 10 credits.
They all do. All 3 scripts then proceed to execute the expensive 1 credit operation, and then they all try to write the new balance, which should be 7 back to the persistent storage. But because they all started from 10, they all try to write a resulting balance of 9.
So only one of them wins.
Exactly. Only one write operation will ultimately succeed based on the timing. Let's say script C manages to write 9. Scripts A and B fail to account for the deductions made by the others. The user just executed 3 costly API operations, but was only charged for 1.
That is a fatal revenue leak.
And it happens silently, systematically, and it can just wipe out your margin completely.
This sounds like a structural flaw in the concurrency model of the serverless environment itself. So how does the architect stop this financial hemorrhage?
The architectural fix is absolutely non-negotiable. The deduction logic has to be atomic. That means the entire read, modify, write sequence, read 10, deduct 1, write 9, must be treated as a single, indivisible operation.
And in the Google Apps Script environment, that protection is provided by the lock service.
Yes, so lock service acts as the gatekeeper. It ensures sequential execution for this kind of critical financial logic.
And specifically, the book calls out lockservice.getUserLock.
It does. This method is mandated here. It creates a mutually exclusive lock that ensures only 1 script thread per user can enter and execute that critical block of deduction code at a time. All other simultaneous threads from that same user are forced to queue up and wait.
Let's get granular here. Why get user lock? Why not the other options, like get script lock?
That's a crucial distinction. Get project lock would lock the critical section for all users running your add-on. That's massive overkill.
Yeah.
And would cause unnecessary lag across your entire user base.
Okay.
Get script lock is usually for operations that only affect the script's internal state. But because we're dealing with the user's unique credit balance, we must use getUserLock. It ensures that user A can run their credit deduction while user B is simultaneously running theirs without any collision.
But user A's 3 simultaneous clicks are forced to queue up.
Exactly. They have to wait for A's lock to release. It's surgical protection.
And where are we storing this credit balance? I'm guessing not in a cell in a Google Sheet?
Oh, absolutely not. You must store the balance in a reliable, fast, and secure persistence layer. In the app script environment, that is the property service. The property service is designed for storing user-specific data, like settings and critically credit balances. Trying to use a spreadsheet cell for this is a common rookie mistake. Spreadsheets are too slow, and their write operations are not inherently atomic or protected against this race condition.
Okay, so walk us through the full mandatory lock protocol using the correct tools.
The sequence has to be rigorous and defensive. First, the script must try to acquire the lock exclusively for the current user using getUserLock. If the lock is already held, the script has to wait or fail gracefully. It cannot proceed.
Okay.
Second, once the lock is acquired, it reads the current credit balance securely from the property service. Third, it executes the core business logic, the deduction math, and immediately deducts the cost and saves the new balance back to the property service, all inside that same atomic block.
And finally, the moment that balance is secured,
You release the lock. This is non-negotiable. This ensures that when the next script instance in the queue finally gets the lock, it reads the new, updated, reduced balance 7 credits, not the stale starting balance of 10 credits.
and that single disciplined architectural step is what protects the revenue stream.
It makes the entire credit pack model sound.
We've covered BYOK for maximum defense and the credit pack model for high-margin, friction-reduced revenue secured by atomic transactions. Both seem sound. But let's circle back to the most aggressive monetization model, the lifetime deal, the LTD.
The LTD.
How do these choices connect to offering an LTD?
The lifetime deal is a classic tool architects use to get quick cash flow, maybe to fund initial runway or build a new feature. But pairing an LTD with an AI wrapper without one of these architectural defenses, it's the fastest route to bankruptcy.
The risk seems obvious. You take a fixed one-time payment today, and then your API costs spike exponentially 5 or 10 years from now, leaving you servicing this indefinite, uncapped liability.
The source material is unequivocal on this. The mandate is clear. The only sustainable structure for selling an LTD on an AI wrapper is the BYO model, period.
So you get that one-time cash injection for the software itself.
For the interface, the logic, the support. But the user is contractually obligated to pay for the fuel, the tokens, for the rest of their lifetime. That is the only way to mitigate the devastating indefinite liability against future API cost volatility.
But what if an architect wants to offer a very limited LTD tier and absorb a small, capped amount of that cost? How do they protect the business legally on the definition of lifetime?
They must include the necessary legal defense, which is known as the sunset clause, and build it right into their terms of service. This clause has to explicitly define lifetime, not as the biological life of the user, but as the lifetime of the product version.
And what does that do for the architect?
It gives the architect the legal right to sunset an old, financially untenable version, say version 1.0, when API costs make it impossible to maintain profitability.
And then they can charge an upgrade fee for a major new release.
Exactly, for version 2.0.
Yeah.
This clause protects the business from indefinite financial liability against market forces that are completely outside the architect's control. It ensures the business is viable for the long term.
Okay. So what does this all mean for you, the spreadsheet architect? We've gone deep into adverse selection, negative working capital, the technical need for the lock service. What's the single core lesson of avoiding the mathematical suicide pact?
The core lesson is that a sustainable AI business simply cannot afford to subsidize its core engine. The cost of generative AI is linear, it's volatile, and it's outside your control. Therefore, your revenue structure has to be linear, usage-based, or fully offloaded with BYA to match it. You have to eliminate that fixed price liability.
So the architect has to move from thinking about features to thinking about monetization alignment, making sure that revenue scales perfectly with usage and cost. Anything less is just a ticking clock to insolvency.
It is. The actionable advice for you today is simple, but it is mandatory. Review your current pricing model immediately. If your tool uses external APIs and offers an unlimited flat rate, you are already exposed to adverse selection.
You're already at risk.
You are. You have to instantly implement usage controls. Whether that's the ultimate defense of the BYO model or the financial integrity of the credit pack, which has to be rigorously protected by the atomic logic of the lock service,
Yeah.
you must prevent your own success from making your growth unprofitable.
Growth is only valuable if it's profitable and sustainable. And protecting your gross margin today is the single best predictor of your valuation tomorrow.
That's right. A sophisticated buyer, whether it's a micro PE firm or a strategic acquirer,
Yeah.
they aren't looking at raw, inflated revenue. They're looking at the stability and the defensibility of your gross margin.
And that stability is a potent signal of structural health.
It justifies a much higher AI premium when it's time for the exit.
Okay, let's leave them with one final provocative thought.
Here it is, straight from the architect's mandate. The only way to truly win the AI race and build generational wealth is to realize that the most valuable code you write is not the function that calls the API. It's the financial architecture, the locks, the property service, the pricing mechanism that protects the function's profitability.
So your goal isn't just to write code for profit.
Your goal is to command a system that generates true sovereignty.